is Warner Brothers, home of some of the best movies and most memorable talents in motion picture history. Not the least of those talents was Humphrey Bogart. And I'm here to try to shed a little light on what Bogart the actor was all about. Despite what you may have heard or read, Bogey was born on Christmas Day, 1899, and died on January 14th, 1957. In that short 57-year span, he made 75 films. Now, audiences often feel they know an actor through his performances. Well, that's true up to a point. What I'm going to tell you about Bogey, about his feelings, about his profession, may surprise you. In a career of many bests, I'm not really sure what his best was. But certainly audiences saw him in a new way as Rick in the city of Casablanca many years ago.
He has the appeal of Robin Hood and of Mac Heath in The Beggar's Opera. I mean, if he's the rebel in a good cause. He's a rebel on behalf of the people. He's against all the pomp and the officialdom and the sleazy operations of the establishment.
Being a tough guy, so to speak, as Bogey was supposed to be, doesn't mean that you hit somebody or punch somebody or shoot somebody faster or harder. It has to do with living 24 hours a day and being able to handle it. That's what makes a mature, heroic figure that we remember forever.
He's a much bigger star today than when he was alive. He has become what amounts to a cult figure.
Bogey's appeal is universal. The French touched on it in Breathless with Jean-Paul Belmondo.
Bogey.
Bogey's fame came early. His mother was Maud Humphrey, an artist who had studied with Whistler in Paris and became known in part for her children's books. He was her favorite subject. He was called the Maud Humphrey baby. One Sunday night in 1951, Ed Sullivan talked to Bogey about his childhood.
A lot of people don't realize that you are a native New Yorker.
That's right.
And your dad was a
My dad was a doctor, yes. I was born in New York City, bed number 21, Sloan's Maternity Hospital. And I lived up on 103rd Street and West End Avenue.
Still not a bad address, but back then rather fashionable. Bogey's father was Dr. Belmont DeForest Bogart, a prominent surgeon. Not the background you'd expect for a future movie gangster. He was educated at New York's Trinity School and later at Andover Academy near Boston. Shortly after Andover, he joined the Navy as America was entering World War I, serving as helmsman on the troopship Leviathan. After the war, Bogey got a job in the theater in New York as a stage manager. At one performance, he had to take over for a missing actor. That did it. No more stage managing.
What were some of the shows you did around here before you went to the coast?
Oh, Lord.
I remember Cradle Snatchers.
Well, let's see, Cradle Snatchers was one, and Saturday's Children, and It's a Wise Child, The Most Immoral Lady, Meet the Wife. Oh, I was in them, but I didn't have a very big part.
Broadway in the 20s. It was a decade Bogey spent learning the acting craft, although the parts he got had a certain consistency to them. Nice juveniles who wore blazers, smiled a lot, and had impeccable manners. Critic Alexander Woolcott wrote in his review of the play Swifty, "The young man who embodies the aforesaid sprig is what is usually and mercifully described as inadequate." Bogey carried that review with him all his life. In 1930, he made his first appearance on film, a short subject shot at Vitaphone's Brooklyn studios. It was called Broadway's Like That and featured the singer Ruth Etting. Although the soundtrack has been lost, it's not hard to tell that Bogey's character was that same nice young man he played on the stage all those years. That same year, Bogey traveled west, made his first Hollywood movie. In this rarely seen film, he played a rich young man abroad.
It is my father who chooses my husband.
Oh, you mean I've got to ask him? I was going to do that.
Me, you do not have to ask.
Oh,
Don Diego te quiere ver a usted.
Ya voy. You wait for me? Please.
Okay, I'll be waiting from now on.
He played juveniles, perfectly straightforward juveniles, just as Spencer played straightforward villains. They were both considered very good actors, but neither of them were real stars.
She don't want to see me. She wants to see you.
Me?
Yeah.
This was his second film and the only time he ever worked with his friend, Spencer Tracy.
I don't know how fond she is of me, but I think she's a fine girl.
Well, ain't you never said anything to her?
No, I haven't had a chance. You know what the rules are.
In 1 year, 1930, Bogey made 6 forgettable movies, and Up the River was one of the best. Can you blame him for returning to the stage in New York? Back on Broadway, while in a play called After All, Hollywood again beckoned. He made 3 films. One was called Big City Blues.
You're tired, baby. I'll drive you home.
Careful, Jackie.
I'll get you things.
Don't you budge 1 foot.
Well, if all said and done ain't gone and come to, then fighting words, mister.
Hey, somebody put Len to bed. The boy's tired.
I'm telling you now, don't you move. I'm taking Jackie home, ain't I, Jackie?
I wish a great big man could fight over me.
She's my girl. Nobody else's, see?
Oh, lie down drunk and sleep it off.
Once again, it was goodbye Hollywood and back to New York, where Bogey settled in for several seasons of theater. He appeared in I Loved You Wednesday and Chrysalis in 1932. Our Wife and The Mask and the Face, both in 1933. And then came Invitation to a Murder in 1934. Producer Arthur Hopkins saw him in it and decided to take a big chance. To Bogey's surprise, he was cast as the gangster Duke Mantee in Robert Sherwood's new play, The Petrified Forest, starring Leslie Howard. The play was a success, and Bogey an immediate hit. It was the first step toward the development of the Bogart character. Meanwhile, Warner's wanted Leslie Howard to make the movie and thought Edward G. Robinson would be just fine as Duke Mantee. Well, Leslie Howard had other ideas. He refused to make the movie without Bogart playing that part. So Warner's had no choice. Bogey got his contract. And The Petrified Forest finally launched Bogey's movie career. Warner signed him to a long-term contract, and he never returned to the stage.
Now just behave yourself, you two. This is Duke Mantee, the world-famous killer, and he's hungry.
What are you doing back here?
Hey, there's some bandits around here.
Yeah.
Leslie Howard recreated his role, and Betty Davis co-starred.
Then they took Mr. Chisholm's car and drove off. They said we could have their car, but we found it locked.
Out on the couch.
Bogey told me he invented that special way of walking because Mantee wore shoulder holsters, and fatigue had almost taken over. As a result of this film, Bogey created an electrifying impression.
Come here. Well, so we meet again. Sit down, pal. Down there. Yeah, I'd be delighted.
20 years later, Bogey recreated the Duke Mantee role for television.
We meet again.
Sit down, pal, down there.
Henry Fonda and I were also in it. It was Bogey's only dramatic appearance on TV.
The cops ain't likely to catch up with us, at least not for a while. So we can all be quiet and peaceable and have a few beers together and listen to the music. Don't let anybody make any wrong moves. 'Cause I may as well tell you folks that old Ruby there with a machine gun, he's pretty nervous and jumpy. And he's got the itch between his fingers. So let's everybody stay where they are.
Let there be killing.
Bogey always felt the TV version didn't match up to the film because there was too much stress on the romance, not enough tension. Remember, the film was made in the mid-30s when gangsters like John Dillinger were in the headlines almost daily. Gangster films were popular and no studio made them like Warner Brothers. They had a roster of major tough guys and they added yet another with Bogey. So he became part of the studio system. 29 films in just 5 years, assigned to one role after another, polishing and developing his craft as he went along. Usually, he was in support of the top Warner stars, suffering at their hands and often the scripts, too. Here in Bullets or Ballots, Bogey arrives for a confrontation with Edward G. Robinson. Eddie was the star. Guess who won? And in San Quentin, Pat O'Brien had a problem. But trust me, it was only temporary.
Joe! Shut up. You were giving me favors so you could kick her around in the gutter. Thought you had her in a swell spot with me locked up. Thought it was safe for you to come here.
You're talking out of your head. Give me that gun.
Yeah, and all the slugs with it.
And he was not a guy to be trusted when your back's turned.
Can I blow now?
Sure. Go ahead.
Gee, thanks. You're a swell guy, Joe. What you want to do that for?
It says here in the book that Napoleon said a good general has got to know when to be just, severe, or mild.
They even put him in a Western. Of course, he was the bad guy.
All right, Jen.
Wore black. Black hat, black suit.
Hey, what are you after?
Nothing much. We just heard you were figuring on building a town here. That's all right with us. All we want's a part of it. And the exclusive rights to any saloons or gambling houses the town might need.
In Dark Victory, Bogey was Betty Davis's horse trainer, and Irish to boot.
This is Miss Judith Traherne of the Sleepy Trahernes.
Oh, is it now? Well, this is Mr. Michael O'Leary of the Wide Awake O'Learys. If you have a cash customer for that colt, we can get 10,000 if you snatch it quick.
If you mean challenger, not 10 and not 20. My head's just woozy, not vacant.
If you don't mind my saying so, Miss Judith, it might be better for you to take charge of the cups and the ribbons and leave the handling of the horses to me. You got more on me than any guy in this town, and I'll lay you odds that the minute you get out of here, you're going straight to the cops and spill everything you know. Well, I'm just going to beat you to the finish.
When it came to Jimmy Cagney, you never counted your chickens.
Get him up, George. So you thought I'd yell copper, huh? Well, I never did that in my life and never will. If I want anything done, I do it myself.
Yeah. You always was a fair guy, Eddie.
Eddie! Crazy! Eddie, no. Oh, Eddie.
One rap you won't beat.
Crazy!
Sounds like Eddie talked out of turn.
But without doubt, this was Bogey's strangest role. A sort of zombie character. Bet you never saw this one.
Perhaps I can help you. Oh, he's ill. We're both victims of...
Of what? Go on, Kane. Victims of what?
Circumstance. This is his stamping ground.
Another Western, another black suit. And this time, a Spanish accent. Bogey played a Mexican bandito.
Immediately. Morel wouldn't be after the mail. Not with 5 businessmen like us carrying between us maybe $15,000 or $20,000.
Yes, that's right. We would be a pretty good haul at that.
That's what I figured. Now, there isn't any point in making any trouble. If you'll hand over quickly what you have, nobody will get hurt. Hey, Miss Flint, why don't you go downstairs and finish your knitting?
He was more in form as a gangster hiding out, discovered by the formidable and charming Zazu Pitts, and it all came true.
What's the matter with you?
Don't you think you better close the door?
Nothing doing.
But I know who you really are.
You what?
I found you in The Perfect Detective. There's lots of pictures of you, mostly hats and elbows. But here's one when you were a little boy in a reform school.
Here, let me see that. That ain't me. You made a mistake.
Oh, no, I haven't. I know. Even then, your eyes were cruel and masterful, Chips McGuire.
I tell you, that ain't me. My name's Griselli.
Oh, no, it isn't, Chipsy.
You call me that again and I'll...
Oh, you're wonderful.
You're nuts.
I'm just as broke as you are.
In They Drive by Night, directed by Raoul Walsh, Bogey and George Raft were truck drivers.
Private papers.
You owe us $300, gentlemen. You're going to pay us now if you don't.
All right. Don't get hot. I'll give you a check.
What'll they do with it? Use it for a tire patch? We'll take it out of here.
Raft, by the way, was soon to figure again in Bogey's career. The lead in Raoul Walsh's next film was offered to George Raft, but he didn't want the part. Paul Muni turned it down, too. So Bogey got a great role by default. It was a stroke of luck. And it was also the beginning of a long relationship with John Huston.
Well, I was a writer at Warner Brothers in the 30s. And Bogart was a contract actor there. I used to see him on the lot, and we became friends. And presently, I wrote a picture that Bogart did, High Sierra, from a novel of W.R. Burnett's.
Bogey played a gangster again, but this time there was an element of humanity. Ida Lupino co-starred.
Listen to this. Police are hot on his trail, and believe it or not, he's traveling with a woman who answers to the name of Marie and a little gray-white mongrel dog who answers to the name of Pard. Look at the tag they hung on me. Mad Dog Earl. Young newspaper roofers.
What are we gonna do, Roy?
Wait a minute. Marie, I gotta park you for a while, like you said.
Like who said?
I remember we agreed that if the going got tough, I was to park you. You said it was a deal.
Oh, now look, Roy, I can't leave you now. I don't care what happens to me. Let's stick together, honey. Let the money go. Forget about it. We'll head east. We'll make it, then we'll be safe.
Baby, you need dough to get back east. I got maybe 30 grand coming to me, and I'm gonna get it. Now, listen. I got an idea. I'll put you on the bus to Las Vegas. You wait there for me. I'll go in and get my end, and I'll come after you.
Oh, no, look, Roy, don't leave me. Please don't leave me. I'm scared about it.
You think I want to take you in and get you shot? Brother, when they hang that #1 tag on you, they shoot first and argue afterwards. I know. Mad Dog Girl, how do you like that?
He was a killer, but by the end of the movie, audiences were rooting for Bogart.
I'm telling you, it's your last chance! That's what you say, copper!
However, unlike today, movie outlaws had to be caught. Bogey was going to have to die in the end, but the impact of High Sierra on his career was enormous. After 11 years in the movie business, Humphrey Bogart became a household name. And he was about to play some of the classic roles of his career.
Harvey? That's me. Now listen, Precious. Miles has been shot. Yeah. Dead.
Coming up next,
There you are.
No, after 17 years.
The Maltese Falcon was based on the novel by Dashiell Hammett. John Huston not only wrote the screenplay, but made his debut as a director. It turned out to be the detective movie against which all detective movies have since been measured.
The original intention was to have George Raft play it, but he pulled away from it because he didn't want to trust his career to a young director, someone who had never directed before. And Bogart, to my secret delight, was substituted. And that picture began, I think, a whole new career for Bogey.
If you kill me, how are you going to get the bird? And if I know you can't afford to kill me, how are you going to scare me into giving it to you?
Well, sir, there are other means of persuasion besides killing and threatening to kill.
Yes, that's true. But they're none of them any good unless the threat of death is behind them. You see what I mean? If you start something, I'll make it a matter of your having to kill me or call it off.
That's an attitude, sir, that calls for the most delicate judgment on both sides. Because as you know, sir, in the heat of action, men are likely to forget where their best interests lie and let their emotions carry them away.
And the trick from my angle is to make my play strong enough to tie you up, but not make you mad enough to bump me off against your better judgment.
I guess you are a character.
Maltese Falcon had been made 10 years earlier, in 1931.
I'll lay you 2-to-1 they're selling you out, kid.
Spade.
6-2 and even, they're selling you out, Sonny. I hope you're not letting yourself be influenced by the guns these pocket edition desperados are waving around. Because I've practiced taking guns away from these boys before, so we'll have no trouble there. Wilmer here is...
All right. Wilmer. 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 Wilmer.
Mary Astor role was played by B.B. Daniels in 1931 with Ricardo Cortez as Sam Spade.
You angel. Well, with a lucky break, you ought to be out of San Quentin in 20 years. And then you can come back to me. I hope they don't hang you, honey. You know, it'd be a shame to stretch that pretty little neck of yours.
Sam, don't say such things. Not even in fun. You can't. Not after what we've been to each other.
Don't be silly, sister. You're going to take the fall.
And there was yet another version in 1936.
You'll miss that reward.
This time, Betty Davis and Warren Williams.
10,000, all right. But I'll miss you too, honey.
I thought you cared about me.
I do, Valerie. But I won't play the sap for you. You gave the works to the Englishman, the Spaniard, Farrell, and Ames. The last 3 fell for you, and they're dead. I'm crazy about you, sweetheart. But I just won't be the 4th guy to die for you.
After botching it twice, they finally got it right.
You get a good break, you'll be out at Tehachapi in 20 years, and you can come back to me then. I hope they don't hang you, Precious, for that sweet neck.
You're not.
Yes, Angel, I'm going to send you over. The chances are you'll get off with life. That means if you're a good girl, you'll be out in 20 years. I'll be waiting for you. If they hang you, I'll always remember you.
Don't say that even in fun. Oh, I was frightened for a minute. I really thought you do such wild and unpredictable things.
Don't be silly. You're taking the fall.
You've been playing with me. Just pretending you cared to trap me like this. You didn't care at all. You don't love me.
I won't play the sap for you.
Oh, you know it's not like that. You can't say that.
You never played square with me for half an hour at a stretch since I've known you.
You know down deep in your heart that in spite of anything I've done, I love you.
I don't care who loves who. I won't play the sap for you. I won't walk at Thursby's, and I don't know how many other footsteps. You killed Miles, and you're going over for it.
The book was finally done, the way it was written. The purpose of the whole story was his partner was killed. And a woman who got him killed was trying to make love to him on a couch. She wanted to go free. And so when he finally says to her, and the cops arrive, I'm going to have to send you over because somebody's got to take the fall. And that's you.
Quintessential Bogart. I think that all that matters in great film acting, and certainly all that matters with Bogart, is what you're seeing going on in his mind from just looking at his face. Everything went on in his face. The camera was made for him, and he was made for it.
Not long after the Maltese Falcon opened, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and we were at war. Bogey entertained the troops overseas and served in the Coast Guard Reserve, while continuing to make war films on the sound stages at Warner Brothers.
How is it below? The engine room's flooded. We're making water fast. Stay here and see that everybody gets out. All right, sir.
The country had turned more cynical and tougher because of the war. And Bogart became a kind of a tough symbol for what was needed to get the job done.
It was a new form of hero. And we felt, I suppose, if you've got Hitler and Dr. Goebbels as enemies, you've got to have somebody equally cunning and subtle, and if you like, malicious and malevolent, but on our side.
Oh, listen, Buster, you ain't got no secrets for me. I just took a quick tour through your tunnel of love. Looks like the #1 office of Hitler and Company. You're coming along too, sister.
You realize you will never get out of here. Every entrance is guarded.
Oh, don't try that line on me, Jack. This is Broadway, not Berlin.
It's a great pity, Mr. Donahue, that you and I should oppose each other. We have so much in common.
Yeah, how's that?
You are men of action. You take what you want, and so do we. You have no respect for democracy. Neither do we. It's clear we should be allies.
It's clear you are screwy. I've been a registered Democrat ever since I could vote.
Of all the movies that Hollywood turned out in those dark, frightening early days of World War II, action films, spy pictures, guerrillas fighting the invading Germans, of all of them, Casablanca stands above the rest. It doesn't have a single American soldier, sailor, or Marine, but it does have a tough, cynical character who lets his idealism get the better of him, and in so doing, outwits the evil forces that surround him. As a result of Casablanca, Jack Warner made the brilliant discovery that Bogey had sex appeal. As you might imagine, Bogey thought that was pretty funny. He said, "I'm the same man I've always been." Jack doesn't realize that if Bergman looks at any man with love in her eyes, he must have sex appeal.
Hey. Hey, what's wrong, kid?
I love you so much. And I hate this war so much. Oh, it's a crazy world. Anything can happen. If you shouldn't get away. I mean, if something should keep us apart, wherever they put you and wherever I'll be, I want you to know that. Kiss me. Kiss me as if it were the last time.
His new romantic image cemented Bogey's position as a star. An image that has come down through 3 generations that still adore Casablanca. Ironically, this film that started out as just another routine production at Warner Brothers won the Oscar for Best Picture and an Oscar nomination for Bogey as Best Actor. And then, of course, there was the timing of the film's release.
Casablanca, stage setting for the war's greatest drama. The epic, unconditional surrender conference of President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Churchill.
The movie came out at the very moment that Churchill and Roosevelt were meeting in Casablanca. But its success to me was that we wanted to have a romantic hero who was working for the Allies. Now, what's so attractive about Bogart is that he starts out as this mysterious nightclub owner in Casablanca. And he keeps asserting that he has no morality, no crusade about this war. All he's interested in is just staying out of trouble. But he's on our side and hates the Germans.
Tonight, Rick. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Unofficially, of course.
Make it official if you like.
What is your nationality?
I'm a drunkard.
And that makes Rick a citizen of the world.
I was born in New York City, if that'll help you any.
I understand that you came here from Paris at the time of the occupation.
There seems to be no secret about that.
Are you one of those people who cannot imagine the Germans and their beloved Paris?
It's not particularly my beloved Paris.
Can you imagine us in London?
When you get there, ask me.
Diplomatist.
How about New York?
Well, there are certain sections of New York, Major, that I wouldn't advise you to try to invade.
Once we knew that Bogart was going to play it, we felt he was so right for it that we didn't have to do anything special, but just write it the way it should be written. We try to make him as cynical as possible. For instance, in the scene between him and Claude Rains, where Claude Rains says, in effect, why can't you go back to America? What did you do?
I've often speculated on why you don't return to America. Did you abscond with the church funds? Do Did you run off with the senator's wife? I like to think that you killed a man. It's the romantic in me.
It's a combination of all three.
And what in heaven's name brought you to Casablanca?
My health. I came to Casablanca for the waters.
The waters? What waters? We're in the desert.
I was misinformed.
Now let's get something straight.
That picture was made with great difficulties because nobody knew what the next day's shooting was going to be like. They didn't know the story. It was really written by ear as we went along. I was supposed to be married to Paul Hendred, and Humphrey Bogart was my great love. And they said, don't be so serious now. Play it just a little bit cool. And I said, what do you mean? Because we haven't decided on the end yet.
There was a lot of chaos in the second half of the picture because they were shooting, and there was a stop date on Bergman, and nobody knew what the ending was going to be. So there was a great deal of, in the front office, it can only be characterized as hysteria.
And that made Humphrey Bogart also very upset. So everybody was on edge and not very happy about it.
During the hysteria of the ending, my brother Phil and I, who collaborated for many years, we looked at each other and said, round up the usual suspects. And we knew we had an ending.
Are you ready, Ilsa?
Yes, I'm ready. Goodbye, Rick. God bless you.
Gotta hurry, you'll miss that plane. Phone down. Get me the radio tower. Put it down.
Major Strasser has been shot. Round up the usual suspects. It might be a good idea for you to disappear from Casablanca for a while. There's a free French garrison over at Brazzaville. I could be induced to arrange a passage.
My letter of transit? I could use a trip. But it doesn't make any difference about our bet. You still owe me 10,000 francs.
And that 10,000 francs should pay our expenses.
Our expenses? Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Serve your country, Maitre. What if you didn't reach Marseille?
I've got to reach Marseille. I don't care about my country. The France you and I loved is dead, Captain. She's been dying for a long time. I saw her die in the Rhineland and in Munich. Now that her death is complete, I can stop lying and tell the truth. I'm trying to get back to a woman I never intended to fight.
Following the success of Casablanca, Bogey was reunited with director Michael Curtiz and several other members of the cast, including Claude Rains, in Passage to Marseille.
Why should we help you escape?
I'll leave that to your conscience.
Your wife is waiting for the man who went away.
But the chemistry wasn't there, and the story seemed more than a bit contrived.
Would you betray such a woman? I leave that to your conscience.
The movie wasn't a blockbuster, but it was an important time for Bogey and me. It was 1944. I was 19, brand new in Hollywood, and under personal contract to director Howard Hawks. Now, Howard had told me he wanted me to be in a movie with either Cary Grant or Humphrey Bogart. I thought, wow, Cary Grant. Bogart? Good actor, but that was all. Well, one day, Howard told me he'd like to introduce me to Humphrey Bogart. Took me onto the set of Passage to Marseille and introduced me to Humphrey Bogart. I'm sorry to say there were no fireworks. He said, "How do you do?" I said, "How do you do?" And that was it. I'd already tested for the Have and Have Not and was going to be in it with, of course, Bogey's approval. And one day I was going into Hawks's office and Bogey was on his way out. As we passed, he said, "Oh, by the way, I saw your test. We'll have a lot of fun together." Well, he was right about that.
Sometimes I know exactly what you're going to say. Most of the time. The other times... The other times, you're just a stinker.
What'd you do that for?
Been wondering whether I'd like it.
What's the decision?
I don't know yet. It's even better when you help. Sure you won't change your mind about this?
Uh-huh.
This belongs to me, and so do my lips. I don't see any difference.
Oh, I do.
Okay. You know you don't have to act with me, Steve. You don't have to say anything, and you don't have to do anything. Not a thing. Oh, maybe just whistle. You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve? You just put your lips together and blow.
I never stopped shaking. I was very nervous. He was very patient. He did everything to make me comfortable. I was very lucky to start my career with him. You see, Bogey was, above all else, a professional. He'd had years on the stage and over 50 films. He believed in actors, and he believed in actors working together. He believed in truth, and he missed nothing. We had a scene in To Have and Have Not. Takes place in his room. Kind of amusing and sexy dialogue filled with double entendres, and the scene ended in a clinch. Bogey had remembered seeing London Fontanne in a play, where after their clinch, she ran her hand up the side of his face and gave him a playful slap. Well, Howard Hawks loved it. You see what you think.
Walk around me. Now, go ahead, walk around me. Clear around. You find anything?
No. No, Steve. There are no strings tied to you. Not yet. Oh, I like that. Except for the beard. Why don't you shave and we'll try it again.
The Big Sleep was next, and the more I watched Bogey, the more impressed I was with his inventiveness as an actor, and his wit. In the bookstore scene with Sonia Darren, for example, that business with the hat and glasses was his idea.
Can I be of any assistance?
Yes. Would you happen to have a Ben-Hur 1860?
A what?
I said, would you happen to have a Ben-Hur 1860?
Oh, a first edition.
No. The third. The one with the erratum on page 116.
I'm afraid not.
How about a Chevalier Audubon 1840 full set, of course?
Not at the moment.
You do sell books. Hmm?
What do those look like? Grapefruit?
Well, from here they look like books. Maybe I better see Mr. Geiger.
He's not in just now.
Well, that's a pity because
I said Mr. Geiger is not in.
I heard you. You needn't yell at me. Well, I'm already late for my lecture on Argentine ceramics, so I guess I won't wait.
The word is ceramics, and they ain't Argentine. They're Egyptian.
You did sell a book once, didn't you? Well, I guess I'll run along to the public library, or I could go to that bookstore across the street, couldn't I? Hmm?
Do so.
Thank you.
One day, a very telling thing happened. We were shooting a rather simple scene.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, Norris. I'd like to see General Sternwood. He's asleep, sir.
I had to come from my bedroom and walk to the door. Easy. Well, something went wrong with the first take. Before take two, Bogey came over to me and said, weren't you doing something before? Like combing your hair, filing your nails? You can't just walk out of your room to the door like a model. You've got to have an attitude, point of view. I never forgot that. It was a great lesson. Well, we did it again, and it worked, I think.
Well, what about Mrs. Rutledge? Is she?
Yes.
Oh, good evening, Mrs. Rutledge.
Hello.
I've got your sister outside. She's all right, but she's not walking very well. I'll need some help.
In the big sleep, Bogey played Detective Philip Marlowe, trying to solve a very complicated case.
Asked me to give you a check.
Watch this scene carefully. It hasn't been seen since the movie was first released, thank God.
Well, George Geiger, yes.
And it's completely closed. I hope this is satisfactory.
500. Well, it's a lot more than I expected, but welcome just the same. Here you are. Here's the 3 promissory notes and Geiger's card. They're in there. As for the rest of the photographs, I'll destroy them myself if you don't mind.
We appreciate what you've done, Mr. Marlowe. Someday my father would like to thank you himself.
Fine, I'll come up and drink some more of his brandy. Maybe talk some more about Sean Regan.
My brandy's just as good. Maybe sometime, if you can stop being a detective long enough, you might have a drink with me.
After we shot that scene and the film was put together, Bogey and I were married. Because there wasn't enough male-female byplay in the first version, the scene was rewritten and reshot.
As far as Geiger's concerned, yes.
Then it's completely closed. I hope this is satisfactory.
500. Well, that's a lot more than I expected, but welcome just the same.
We're very grateful to you, Mr. Marlowe, and I'm very glad it's all over. Tell me, what do you usually do when you're not working?
Play the horses, fool around.
No women?
Well, I'm generally working on something most of the time.
Could that be stretched to include me?
Well, I like you. I told you that before.
I liked hearing you say it. But you didn't do much about it.
Well, neither did you.
Well, speaking of horses, I like to play them myself. But I like to see them work out a little first. See if they're front runners or come from behind. Find out what their whole card is. What makes them run.
Find out mine?
I think so.
Go ahead.
I'd say you don't like to be rated. You like to get out in front. Open up a lead, take a little breather in the back stretch, and then come home free.
You don't like to be rated yourself.
I haven't met anyone yet that could do it. Any suggestions?
Well, I can't tell till I've seen you over a distance of ground. Got a touch of class, but I don't know how far you can go.
A lot depends on who's in the saddle. Go ahead, Marlowe. I like the way you work.
Bogey and I were married on May 21st, 1945, at the Ohio farm of his great friend, writer Louis Bromfield. During the ceremony, I glanced at Bogey and saw he had tears in his eyes. He said it was hearing the traditional words and realizing their meaning that did it. 3.5 years later, we became parents, the first time for each of us. Stephen Humphrey, the Steve after Bogey's character in To Have and Have Not, was born on January 6, 1949. So Bogey became a father at the age of 49, and more than a bit awed by it. Our daughter Leslie, named after her father's mentor, Leslie Howard, arrived less than 4 years later. There he was, the man who never thought he'd have a family with a family. A wife he loved who loved him, and a beautiful son and daughter. You know, before I ever met him, I thought Bogey really talked like he did in all those gangster films. I was shocked to discover that he didn't. Off-screen, he bore little resemblance to the parts he played. He was a gent. In his words, a last-century boy. His own man, standards high, true character and integrity. He would not tolerate a lie. So what people call toughness was not toughness. It was conviction. Let the chips fall where they may, he would not compromise. In 1947, we were among a group from Hollywood that flew to Washington to protest the House Un-American Activities Committee's investigation of alleged communists in the film industry.
This is Humphrey Bogart. We sat in the committee room and heard it happen. We saw the gavel of a committee chairman cutting off the words of free Americans. The sound of that gavel, Mr. Thomas, rings across America. Because every time your gavel struck, it hit the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States.
We also got involved in presidential campaigns, supporting Harry Truman when he ran for a full term in 1948, and worked fervently for Adlai Stevenson in '52.
They were a very gutsy couple, the Bogarts. And during that campaign, the studios, while pretending to official neutrality, certainly hinted to a lot of their stars that an embrace of Stevenson might shorten the long-term contract. And so there was an absolute stampede of stars who liked Ike. I think it's just typical of Bogart that he would say, "The hell with them. We're going off for Stevenson."
The reason that Bogart and Bacall become a symbol is they had not only the ability in their private life to love each other and to love their children, but to be able to put it on the screen so it didn't make you squirm in the seat.
Our third film together was Dark Passage, shot partly on location in San Francisco. It was a romantic mystery with Bogey playing an innocent man on the run from the law.
This is Alan.
Do I hear music?
Yes, I picked it out on the jukebox. I'm just beginning to realize it's better to have something to look forward to. Can you get a map for South America?
I'll find one.
Look up Peru. There's a little town on the coast called Paita. Say it. Tell me where it is.
Paita in Peru.
Good. Now listen. I won't write. We've got to wait. We've got to give it plenty of time. Maybe they'll get a lead on you. Maybe they'll keep an eye on you for a while.
I'll be careful. Go on.
Meanwhile, God's good to me, and I managed to make it down there. I'll be waiting for you. There's a little cafe right on the bay. If you could see your way clear, listen to all those ifs.
We'll skip all the ifs. I get the idea, and that's all I need. Now hang up on me. Just like that. Hang up, darling.
And then John Huston lured Bogey to a rugged and windy location in Mexico. The film was Treasure of the Sierra Madre. In these recently discovered outtakes, you'll notice Bogey also had to contend with some undisciplined four-legged extras. Treasure was an important film in both Bogey's and John Huston's careers. In addition to writing the screenplay and directing, Huston played a small cameo role in the beginning of the film.
Early this afternoon, I gave you money. While I was having my shoes polished, I gave you more money. Now you put the bite on me again. Do me a favor, will you? Go occasionally to somebody else. It's beginning to get tiresome.
Oh, excuse me, mister. I never knowed it was you. I never looked at your face. I just looked at your hands and the money you gave me. Beg pardon, mister. I promise I'll never put the bite on you again.
This is the very last you get from me. Just to make sure you don't forget your promise. Here's another peso.
Thanks, mister. Thanks.
But from now on, you have to make your way through life without my assistance.
I wrote the script.
They're running short of provisions, Dottie.
And I had two people in mind. One was my father, and the other was Bogart.
What's that, Dad?
Well, they were the two closest actors to
Well,
me.
it's a bad sign when the guy starts talking to himself.
Yeah, well, who else am I going to talk to? Certainly not you or Curtin. Fine partner as you two are.
Got something up your nose? Blow it out. It'll do you good.
I don't get the idea you two are putting anything over on me.
Take it easy, Dad.
I know what your game is.
Well, you know more than I do.
Why am I elected to go to the village? Why me instead of you and Curtin? Oh, don't think I don't see through that. You two thrown together against me.
The 2 days I'd be gone would give you plenty of time to discover where my goods are, wouldn't it?
Then if you're along those lines, why don't you take your goods along with you?
And run the risk of having them taken from me by bandits?
If you was to run into bandits, you'd be out of luck anyway. They'd kill you for the shoes on your feet.
Oh, so that's it. Everything's clear now. You're hoping bandits will get me. That would save you a lot of trouble, wouldn't it? And your consciences wouldn't bother you none, neither.
All right, Dawes. Forget about it.
John Huston and Bogey loved working together. And with John's direction, Bogey gave some of the best performances of his career, such as the developing paranoia in the Dobbs character.
Get your hands up. Come on, get him up! Was I right, or was I? You and your Sunday school talk about protecting people's goods. You. Come on, stand up and take it like a man. Come on, get up! Let go of it. Cards are dealt the other way now, Dobbs.
Yeah.
Now listen to me.
I'll
Dobbs,
listen to you.
look, you're all wrong. Not for a moment did I ever intend to rob you or do you any harm. Just like I said, I'd fight for you and yours just the same as I'd fight for the old man's.
If you really mean that, give me back my gun. My pal.
Wouldn't it be better the way things are to separate tomorrow? Or even tonight?
That would suit you fine, wouldn't it?
Why me more than you?
So you could fall on me from behind, sneak up and shoot me in the back.
I'll go first.
And wait for me on the trail, ambush me?
Why wouldn't I do it right here and now if I meant to kill you?
I'll tell you why. Because you're yellow. You haven't got nerve enough to pull the trigger while I'm looking you straight in the eye.
If you think like that, there's nothing to do but to tie you up every night.
I'll tell you what. I'll make you a little bet. 3 times 35 is 105. I'll bet you $105,000 you go to sleep before I do.
John Huston also directed the 4th and final film Bogey and I made together, Key Largo. It was a fantastic experience working with John and that terrific ensemble. Lionel Barrymore,
The boss,
Claire Trevor,
He can go to...
Edward G. Robinson.
Hello, darling.
The screenplay for Key Largo was written by John Huston and Richard Brooks.
Bogey, in that part, was everything that he should have been. It's a passive role. But he made a passive role an active character. And if you ever see that movie again, watch what he does with it. Watch him play a decent moment that we all would like to be able to do, even though someone's holding a pistol on us or throwing a gun down on us. Watch him play it.
Smacker, get it out of your system.
Look at him, the great Johnny Rocco, with Nora's spittle hanging from his feet.
Now, shut up, old man.
Come over here, I'd like to spit on you.
Gimme. Gimme. Nothing to stop me from wiping you all out.
What good'll that do, boss? Forget it. Her kind's a dime a dozen.
I say smack her and let it go at that.
Oh, that'll be right for you, Toots, not for him.
I need your advice. I ask for it.
The Roccos don't, or they wouldn't be Roccos. No, Toots, smacking her isn't enough for such an insult. He'd have to kill her. And he'd have to kill the rest of us because we witnessed it. Not just Mr. Temple and me, but all the witnesses. It's kill us all or nothing. He needs you and Curly and Angel, so it'll be nothing.
Wise guy.
And at the end, after all those early movies when Bogey was done in by Edward G. Robinson, film after film, finally, it was his turn.
Okay, soldier? I'm coming out. Okay, soldier? I got no gun and I'm coming out. Soldier!
of Bogey's seeming knowledge about boats in that movie were not manufactured. He was a terrific seaman that he loved the sea. And so when it came time to put a name on this little boat, Key Largo, he suggested, well, why don't we call it the Santana? That's the name of Bogey's boat. Almost every weekend that was possible to get away, that's where he'd be, on that boat. And I think I made some movies of some of those weekends, and I could begin to understand his passion that he had for sailing. He was in command for a short time of his own destiny.
Bogey loved teaching me his love of the sea. It was one of his greatest joys when Steve was old enough to come on board. Bogey was fulfilled, completely satisfied when he was on the Santana. One look at his face and you could see the purity and the simplicity of the man I knew.
Unless you really understand the water and understand the reason for being on it and understand the love of sailing and the feeling of quietness and solitude, you don't really belong on a boat anyway. I think Hemingway said one time, the sea was the last free place on earth.
To realize his dream of professional independence. He wanted to make his own choices. So after 12 years of being a contract player at Warner Brothers, he formed his own company, Santana Productions. The first film from Santana was Knock on Any Door.
Knock on any door, and you may find Nick Romano.
Bogey played an attorney who defended a young kid on trial for killing a cop.
The newspapers have been clamoring for pictures and stories about this trial. Well, why don't you print this? They and you and I, we good people, we, the solid citizens of this community, we photographed and labeled this boy years ago. We made this rendezvous with him years ago. We brutalized and ordered him here years ago. If he dies in the electric chair, we killed him. Print that. Where do we take him now? Do we kill him? The current coursing through the blood, the nerves, the heart, the brain. I ask mercy from this court. I ask this so that for us who walk free, for all of us, there may be some mercy.
Bogey's biggest problem as an independent was finding good material. But sometimes the effort paid off.
One of the most interesting, I think, Humphrey Bogart performances where there's a kind of a merging of the mythological Bogart and the actor Bogart is in Nicholas Ray's In a Lonely Place, in which he plays a very neurotic writer. That is an interesting combination of the two sides of Bogart.
Oh, that's all right, Fran. I've already told Laurel how you used to pursue me.
Dick, Brody wants me for the part of Althea. I'm going to read the script tonight.
Whose script?
Yours, genius. He's going to send it to my house. That is, if he likes it.
Did he tell you where he got my script?
I took it to him, thanks. This morning. I stole it out of Laurel's desk.
No, he didn't. I gave it to him.
But Brody's been so impatient.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mel. I always put my foot into it.
Don't be angry, Dick. I know Brody will love it.
Oh, I don't blame you, but Mel should have known better.
Why don't I keep my big mouth shut?
Is there a juicy part in it for me? Did you read it?
No.
You're lying. You read it and you didn't like it.
What does it matter what I think? I'm the guy that tried to talk Selznick out of doing Gone with the Wind.
What's wrong with my script?
Nothing, but it's not the book. And that's what Brody asked for, a faithful adaptation.
The book was trash, and you're a thief.
Dick, please.
Santana was in business for 6 years and produced 5 movies. The last of them was shot on location in Ravello, Italy. Called Beat the Devil, it had everything going for it. A script by Truman Capote and John Huston, with Huston directing. A couple of John's friends shot this footage of an early scene in the film. The cast included Peter Lorre, Gina Lola Brigida, Jennifer Jones, and Robert Morley.
Not quite now, Convict Billy. Hard liquor before noon.
I'm celebrating.
Celebrating what?
The safe arrival of the Major. He came galloping in a minute ago looking tired but satisfied. I'd take it his mission was accomplished?
Yes, but it's getting on for lunch.
Beat the Devil was a disappointment on all counts when it first came out. But in more recent times, it's gained a cult following.
If I loved you 1,000 times more than you say you love me, it still wouldn't make any difference. I've got to have money. Doctor's orders are that I must have a lot of money. Otherwise, I'd become dull, listless, and have trouble with my complexion.
But you're not like that now, and you haven't any money.
It's my expectations that hold me together.
3 years earlier, in 1951, John Huston lured Bogey and Katharine Hepburn to a far more exotic location, the Belgian Congo, to make the African Queen. I went with them and tried to capture some of our adventures in these home movies. For Bogey, the African Queen turned out to be his most exciting, most difficult, and most rewarding film.
Oh, now, don't talk silly, miss. You can't do that. Honest, you can't. I told you before, we can't get down the Olanga.
Spengler did.
What did a canoe,
If a German
miss?
did it, we can do it, too.
Well, not in no
How do you
launch,
know?
miss.
You've never tried
Well, I
it.
never tried shooting myself in the head, neither. The trouble with you, miss, is you don't know anything about boats.
In other words, you are refusing to help your country in her hour of need, Mr. Olnut?
Well, I wouldn't put it that way.
Just how would you put it, Mr. Olnut?
All right, miss, have it your own way, but don't blame me for what happened.
Very well, then. Let's get started.
What, now, miss?
Yes, now.
Well, there ain't 2 hours of daylight left, miss.
We can go a long way in 2 hours, Mr. Olnut.
I'll have to get the old kettle to boiling and...
Well, do so, Mr. Olnut.
You see, I'm a natural-born griper. I just gripe at everything, and I'm kind of like a GI in the Army, you know. Gripe about the food, gripe about the conditions, but go ahead and do the work. Whereas Katie used to drive me crazy. Make a torpedo. Well, do so, Mr. Allnut. He loved everything. The natives were divine. The heat was divine. Everything was divine with Katie. She loved every minute of it. She would like to stay there for the next 6 years. My wife was on Katie's side, and they were both on John Huston's side. I guess I was the only one who thought it was too hot and too damp, and why we were there. So I just drank my scotch and griped.
Bogey seemed nice, and he was very direct. I don't think he was curious about Africa. I don't think he wanted to hunt elephants. He certainly wasn't like John. I know Bogey admired John, and understandably, because John, while he was difficult, was no fool. And John was obviously always anxious to have him. And I thought Bogey had the absolutely perfect personality for that part.
At first, he said, I don't know how to go about it. And but there was that quality in Bogey that I knew would furnish Mr. Allnut's character.
It was a curious combination of characteristics and a strange sense of accomplishment that he got going downriver with Rosie.
We made it!
Hip, hip, hooray!
Oh, we sure put one over on him that time, didn't we, Liz?
What a curious thing to have people shooting at you.
Surprised to see the African Queen that didn't start shooting till we were past.
One knows it's dangerous in there, but it's the
They
rated
didn't
door.
believe we tried to get down the gorge.
I suppose it's because the bullets sound like mosquitoes.
They didn't believe anybody could.
I felt like slapping.
Well, we showed them. Hip, hip, hooray!
It was fascinating to me, the shot of Bogey after he'd kissed Rosie.
Nice. Handling, Mr. Rose, all right?
Well, yes. We're better than all right, miss. Well, we're running short of fuel. Better put in someplace.
When he went around the back of that tank, and he looked so appalled and so shocked and full of wonder. What is this? He was sweet, Bogey. Nice man.
For his performance as Charlie Allnut, Bogey got his second Oscar nomination for Best Actor.
The winner is Humphrey Bogart.
The response to his winning amazed Bogey. He'd never thought of himself as a popular choice, as well as a deserving one. To him, acting was collaborative, never competitive. He took great pride in his profession. He liked being an actor. As a man who always enjoyed the company of newspaper men and counted many among his friends, his next role seemed a natural. The film was Deadline USA, written and directed by Richard Brooks.
We were shooting in New York, and the Daily News had very kindly agreed to let us use the newspaper in the city room as well as the press room. Bogey came in early, and he would spend a good deal of time up there in the city room, watching it work, and seeing what his job was really about, and how the newspaper itself functioned. Bogart is the managing editor of a great newspaper.
This is it.
The publisher of the paper has died, and a sporting newspaper is trying to buy it.
As far as we're concerned, his offer is a generous one.
He's only buying our circulation features and goodwill. He's eliminating his competition, that's all. Mrs. Garrison, you've got to stop them. Your husband created a new kind of journalism, and you helped him. Take a look at the first paper you ever printed. Here, page 1, quote. This paper will fight for progress and reform. We'll never be satisfied merely with printing the news. We'll never be afraid to attack wrong, whether by predatory wealth or predatory poverty. You're not selling the day, you're killing it.
The hearing to approve the sale will take place in Surrogate's Court day after tomorrow. You'll be there, of course.
I never go to funerals.
Bogey teamed with writer director Richard Brooks again for Battle Circus with June Allison. He played a surgeon, shades of his own father, in a mobile army hospital in Korea. It was MASH, 17 years before the movie called MASH was made.
Originally, ours was called MASH, but studio didn't like the title because they thought that people might think it had something to do with a potato. In any event, I gave him the script to read, and he said, yeah, he'd like to do it because he thought that the combination of humor against the tragedy of war was so outrageous. That, in contrast, would become real.
You got a problem?
Can't open my eyes. Do I look all right in the morning?
Oh, you look fine in the morning.
Do you believe in dreams?
Only about lush women and black silk stockings.
I had a dream about us.
Why dream, baby?
We were in our house, and you were very, very sick, and I made you well.
And I know how.
I cooked, and I baked for you.
That's what made me sick.
And then when you came home from the office...
Oh, I never come home. Work all day at the office.
Oh, well, then I'll come and see you. And I'll pretend I'm a patient. Then in your private office, we'll make love.
I lose more patience that way.
You're a funny guy. Can't you say you love me?
Oh, I think it's better to do it than say it.
You don't, though, do you?
Why do we have to talk about it? Why do we always have to try to find words for it?
The truth is that...
The truth should never be told by lovers. When it is, the affair is over.
He gets the girl in the end. And a few years later, he wins again as a conservative businessman competing with his younger brother for the affections of Audrey Hepburn. Bogey wasn't very happy with this film, but audiences loved it.
How do you say in French, my sister has a yellow pencil?
Ma sœur a un crayon jaune.
How do you say, my brother has a lovely girl?
Mon frère a une gentille petite amie.
And how do you say, I wish I were my brother?
As much as Bogey enjoyed the variety of roles he played, audiences still thought of him as the ultimate tough guy.
Hey, who are you, hey? I'm talking to you, Fatso. Where would Eddie Cantor be?
It amused him a lot, and over the years he often had fun with this image.
Listen, Jughead, don't you believe Eddie Cantor wants to talk to me? He's been sending me notes all day. Here, I'll show some of the notes to you.
Notes to me?
Yeah.
Notes to you, too? I'm a musician. I know more about notes than you do.
All right. Cool off.
And when I talk to you, keep a civil tongue in my hat.
Well, what did I do?
Did I send for you?
Why, no, but...
I start this conversation.
No, but...
Then you mind my business and I mind yours. Now get out, stay out, and never come back. You understand?
Sure, if that's the way you want it.
Jeez, let the old man bulldoze you, eh?
Yeah, that ain't like me. Gee, I hope none of my movie fans hear about this.
You never leave me alone because you've been hounding me just because I pulled a couple of lousy murders.
And here, too, with Jack Benny.
Well, what are you going to do? I'm going to put a red eye between them two blue ones. Where'd you get the gun? You didn't frisk me so good when I came in, did you?
No. No, when I put my hand in your pocket, I found a dollar bill, and I got so excited I didn't look at it.
In 1954 came one of Bogey's most striking performances, The Caine Mutiny, from the book by Herman Wouk. Bogey based his portrayal of the mentally ill Captain Queeg on someone he knew who suffered from paranoia, and he received his third Oscar nomination. His co-star was Van Johnson.
I have just relieved the captain. He will continue to be treated with the utmost courtesy, but from now on, I will give all orders. I take full responsibility for this action.
Don't kid yourself. Mr. Keith backed you up. He'll pay the same as you will. You officers, if you know what's good for you, tell them to stop now while they can. You officers approve? Do you, Mr. Kiefer?
It isn't up to Mr. Kiefer to approve, Captain.
You'll all hang for conspiracy to mutiny.
Everybody back to their station. Hold the course 000.
I saw this man go mad in front of me, particularly at the trial at the end, when he realized he gave himself away with the steel balls, and he did it so beautifully with those crazy eyes, and practically talked himself into showing that he was paranoid and was guilty of neglecting his ship.
I'm afraid the defense has no other recourse than to produce Ensign Harding.
Now, there's no need for that. I know exactly what he'll tell you. Lies. He was no different from any other officer in the wardroom. They were all disloyal. I tried to run the ship properly with a book, but they fought me at every turn. If the crew wanted to walk around with their shirt tails hanging out, that's all right. Let them. Take the tow line. Defective equipment, no more, no less. But they encouraged the crew to go around scoffing at me and spreading wild rumors about steaming in circles and then old Yellowstain. I was to blame for Lieutenant Merrick's incompetence and poor seamanship. Lieutenant Merrick was the perfect officer, but not Captain Queeg. Ah, but the strawberries. That's where I had them. They laughed at me and made jokes. But I proved beyond the shadow of a doubt and with geometric logic that a duplicate key to the wardroom icebox did exist. And I'd have produced that key if they hadn't pulled the Caine out of action. I know now they were only trying to protect some fellow officer and... Naturally, I can only cover these things from memory. If I've left anything out, why, just ask me specific questions and I'll be glad to answer them one by one.
Whatever part Bogey played, he had to believe in the character and the situation.
Where's Toro?
He prepared for his part in The Harder They Fall by soaking up seedy gymnasium atmosphere and going to fights at Madison Square Garden.
Okay.
The Harder They Fall was to be his final film.
He can't hit. He's a stiff, muscle-bound. You're not even a
Bogey
tenth-rate
played a
fighter.
sports
You're
writer
what they
turned
call
corrupt
a
press agent for a clumsy giant whose bouts were fixed by a crooked manager.
I do not know my own strength.
Leave all those lies I write about you. Nick Benko paid me to make up those fairy tales so people would think you couldn't be hurt.
No one can hurt Del Toro.
The script was based on a novel by Bud Schulberg.
Go away, Eddie.
He was really someone who's in a tough and cynical world and yet is almost secretly not a part of that world, and who is driven by his conscience when he realizes what they've done to this poor dumb giant.
I go home now. Get my money.
Yeah, I'll get your money and you can go home. I don't talk anymore. Wait a second. What's going on here?
What's the matter with you? You're in.
Sure, I'm making you the same deal that Nick gave you.
Bogart feels for him and tries to get the money for him.
Here's your share. $26,000.
Want to count it?
What's Toro got coming?
It's the climactic moment of the movie, the scene that gave him a chance to play in that very, very controlled way that he had, while telling you that he felt much more than he was showing.
Tell me how much Toro's got coming.
Wait, I want you to hear all of it. There's the equipment, sparring partners, transportation, long-distance calls, telegrams, bills to the other
How
party
much
who
does he get?
Federal, state taxes, petty cash, and miscellaneous.
How much does he get?
Exactly $49.07.
Let me hold my money, Eddie.
All right, there it is.
How much?
$26,000.
In my country, that is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money in any country.
Around this time, 1956, Bogey and I were planning another movie together called Melville Goodwin, USA. But it was never to be. Bogey became seriously ill. We never got any further than this costume test.
When anyone is desperately ill, you get a feeling, oh dear, it's going to be soon, which struck me. So Spencer and I went to the house, we went in, and we talked for a while, and Bogey was entertaining as always, and he was sitting in a chair in his bedroom, sitting in a wheelchair. And then we got up to go so as not to exhaust him, and I kissed him goodbye, walked over to the door, and Spencer walked over and patted his shoulder and said, we're on our way. And Bogey reached up with his hand, patted Spencer's hand, looked at him, and said, goodbye, Spence.
Bogey died the next morning. It's now 31 years later. Our children are grown. Steve is a network television news producer. Leslie is a registered nurse and teaches yoga. They wear the Bogart name proudly and are the kind of people Bogey wanted them to be. For myself, I can only say that he changed me. He was my teacher, my husband, my friend. In his life and his work, Bogey was integrity, truth, and courage. He taught me how to live, that it was okay to trust. He taught me to keep going, no matter what. He did. And he is.